Hello and welcome to Low Carb Conversations. I'm your host, Leah Williamson, and I'm with my host, Holly Jean. Welcome, Holly.
Hello. Hi, Leah.
We've got a great guest today. Our guest today is Wade Lightheart. Welcome, Wade.
Great to be here, ladies.
Wade is an author, athlete, nutritionist, and expert on fixing digestion, which we love all things digestion. He's a 3-time Canadian national all bodybuilding champion, a Mr. Universe competitor, host of the Awesome Health podcast, and co-founder and president at BioOptimizers, a digestive and health optimization company. So that's pretty exciting, Wade. I'm excited to get into all of this information about you. So let's do it. So I want to know, what is the back history? There's always a story to somebody starting and doing all these amazing things. So we want to hear about it.
Yeah, I basically say I'm a tar paper shack Canadian who lived on the edge of the wilderness. And when I was 15 years old, I was living 5 miles to my nearest neighbor up a dirt road where the telephone poles ended at my yard. There was no cell phones, internet. We used a wood stove, and we were caretakers of a private resort. And during that time, was subjected to a lot of isolation, which I hated at the time, but allowed me to become introspective and observant of nature. And being integrated with nature, it gave me what the sound of silence is, both internally and externally. And from that became a benchmark to self-monitor my own observational stuff. So I'm a critical thinking generalist. And from that, with probably a little bit of contrarian libertarian bent. So AKA a health rebel. And then my sister at the time was also diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, a form of cancer of the lymph nodes. And over the course of the next 4 years, I watched her go through the health model and turn from a high performance athlete with a burgeoning career with the Canadian military, and before she died at the age of 22. And so that crisis created 2 underlying themes, which I think I've literally led me in a direction in life. So within every crisis lies the seeds of opportunities and an invitation from divinity to find out your sole purpose in life. And in that case, I learned number 1, that your health wasn't a guarantee, and number 2, your life wasn't a guarantee. And at a formative age as a teenager, that had a profound effect on me. Subsequently, my sister during that illness gave me a book, or magazine actually. It was Muscle and Fitness, and had Troy Zuclato, Mr. California on the cover. And it had these 2 pretty girls on top of it, and, driven mad with testosterone as most 15-year-old boys are. I was like, wow, if I had those muscles, I would get those girls. So I bought the Joe Weider lie and started lifting weights, built a gym in my garage with pulleys and tractor tires and all sorts of assorted rocky Balboa type materials. And began the endeavor of self-development through physical culture. I discovered Arnold Schwarzenegger, who said 3 things in his books to me that had a profound effect. He said that you could achieve anything in life with discipline, hard work, and a positive attitude. Well, everybody I knew in that environment worked really, really hard. Almost no one had a positive attitude, and I'd never heard of what the benefits of discipline could be. And so I applied those principles, and he became my pseudo mentor and led me to end up going to university and studying exercise physiology, and upon doing my 4 years time there, and I call it time because the education I got was not the one I expected in university. And it was a lot of compartmentalization of information and very little integrated. So hyper specialization, where the physiologists didn't understand what the biologists were doing, the biologists didn't understand the psychologists, and the psychologists didn't see to interact with the engineers, and the engineers, thought they were all a bunch of fools and they were the kings of the thing. So I saw these kind of subcategories of expertise, which were highly knowledgeable, but very little in application. And so that led me to start looking for mentors that could produce the results I want. And stumbling and bumbling my way through life, I worked in every single facet of the health industry, from being a nutritional store retail clerk to a special in sports nutrition, working in a warehouse, running a gym, owning and operating my own store, meanwhile building my bodybuilding career, becoming a personal fitness trainer and nutrition coach, ultimately leading me to the pinnacle of physical culture where I competed at the Mr. Universe contest as a representative of my home country. And that all sounds wonderful and great, but it's a long, boring journey with a lot of mistakes. And after the Mr. Universe contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow. And the reason I did that is because I made the fatal flaw that almost everybody does today. It's almost impossible to overcome. And that is that we are given the representations of health through a cosmetic idea. In other words, if you have a six-pack of abs, or you're on the cover of, you're an Instagram model, or you're on the cover of this magazine and from Hollywood Vogue or something like that, you are instantly determined that because you look a certain way that you're healthy. And I had the naive projection, which is normal, that was true. What I didn't understand is that a high performance look, in this case, aesthetically related, was actually counterproductive to being healthy. And so I was fit, but not healthy. I had low body fat levels, great cardiovascular, high levels of muscularity, great bone density. But at the consequence, my cognitive performance was great. My joints were suffering from inflammation. I was tired a lot. I was irritable because of the consequence of my high performance diet that let me look a certain way, but not feel a certain way. And that led me to a fellow that changed my life. His name was Dr. Michael O'Brien, a magnetic senior citizen who was in his 70s, late 70s, and was literally to this day the most vibrant human being I've ever met. His cognitive capacity was extraordinary. His vibrancy of his skin was translucent. He could look right through, and he told me a story which was extremely disruptive to the Vogue information at the time, but was undeniable in its application and his effects. He was famous for overcoming cirrhosis of the liver. He had overcome colon cancer. He'd helped Bernard Jensen, the famous physical culturist who wrote the book on digestion, recover from advanced stage cancer. And he taught me about enzymes, probiotics, digestive health, electrical information inside the body, the transference of information, and cultivating the principles of health and vitality, which I engaged in, both my business partner and myself. Spent about $1,500 a month. I went to a completely raw food diet. And in 6 months, not only had I recaptured my health, but I had recaptured my physique, and I felt absolutely amazing. Matt and I started a little company and started coaching other athletes who I felt were going to fall into the same problem that I had, and I wanted to help them avoid that. And over the next 4 years, we coached 15,000 people from around the world. And in that time, we started to hone the practices and principles of what we advocated, because we had all these test subjects. Essentially, it was essentially just a real world, not like a clinical trial, but like a, something at a published trial or a double-blind study. It was more clinical experience. And at that point, we started writing books and taking it, because I came back to the bodybuilding world, applied these principles, got in shape in record time again, went to the world championships again, did better than I did before, because I had no business being in a bodybuilding contest anyways, but I did very well. And from that, and I didn't get sick. I didn't gain weight. I didn't feel bad. I felt great the whole time. And I was like, you know what? I got something that we can share with the world. And that was the foundations of our company today, which is Bioptimizers, which is one of the leading biohacking, biological optimization companies in the world, which address digestive health, nervous system function, and now moving into cognitive performance.
Wow, that's certainly a journey, and like a lot of moving components in there, but certainly shaped the person that you are today. Tell us a little bit more about the company then, because you've just introduced it. So you're mainly into nutritional supplements.
Well, beyond that, I think our goal is to help humans be healthy to 100 and beyond. And in doing that, we started out and are still primarily an education company first. I do not believe, even though we sell and advocate and develop some of the world's best supplements, and we can get into why I can make that claim, but more importantly than that, I don't believe in randomly shotgunning supplements into your life. I created a philosophy called the Awesome Health Philosophy, which constitute the first principles of cellular function and physiological function. We don't even get to supplements till level 5 in the equation. And that AWESOME is an acronym for air, water, exercise, sunlight, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, education, testing, and coaching. These comprise a philosophy that I advocate to our students, and I give it away on our We have an app and people get the information and download it. We have a book, From Sick to Superhuman, the Blueprint for Biological Optimization, which we make available to people because I'm a coach at heart. Coaches changed my life. And Matt was a coach as well. We were both personal trainers. We started the company. We just wanted to expand beyond the one-on-one and one-on-many into a digital offering where we could provide a place where people could come, could go, and to learn these principles systematically. And then, cost is always an issue. I'm from a very low income, low opportunity environment. And so, especially when people start out, they often have very limited resources. So where could they spend their time, their energy, and the money to get the most leveraged effect? And I would say deep breathing to start, high quality water and hydration second, and third, some form of exercise that they continue to do on a day-to-day basis. Those three are non-negotiables, and exposing oneself to increasing levels of sunlight will 9 times out of 10 optimize a lot and cost very little. And at that point, as one raises one's vibration, opportunities become attracted to you, because I do believe that we are living in an electromagnetic vibratory field. And as one vibration raises, the things that don't serve you fall away, and the things that do become magnetically attracted into your life. And so I'm an advocate of those things. So there is a supplement part of it that can augment and enhance one's life. But first principles first, get on this pathway first, and the journey will take care of itself. And the right thing at the right time will show up.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great philosophy, because so many times people just think that the supplement is going to fix everything without doing any of the other work. And while it might give you a little bit of a boost or some kind of help, if you just go back to those old habits where you're not getting sunshine or not drinking water or not breathing or whatever it is that you're doing, those supplements are only going, you can't basically out supplement a bad lifestyle, right? Can you?
No, you can't. And that's one of the things I actually said. You can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle. Exactly. So you see, we're already on the same wavelength. We're just advocates of the truth from a certain frequency perspective.
All right. And I want to know now then your claim that you have the best nutrition supplement company.
Yes.
How's that?
So, a couple of things that we do very different. Number one, and this isn't just speak, Matt and I, when we engaged in the development of these supplements, and so after our mentor passed away, he transferred an incredible amount of knowledge into us, and we started to design our first enzyme product, which is still remarkably, now it's 16 years, Masszymes has been serving the public. It's around its 3rd generation of that product. And it's probably the most all-encompassing enzyme. It's enzymes for the masses. It's basically whatever your dietary choices, it'll be an effective advocate. And now we have other offerings which are more specified, whether it's a ketogenic diet or gluten enzymes that break down Gluten Guardian. And now we'll be releasing Vegzymes, which is for people serving in the plant-based market like myself. But we determined first and foremost that we were only going to make first-in-class, best-in-class principles. So if we can't make the best-in-class or the first ever in a particular class of product, we don't do it. Second, we formulate and develop our products based on efficacy, not on price. And so our margins are much lower than typical supplement companies. And what our suggestion is, well, if we can make a product that works, and we make less money, the likelihood that someone stays on that product is much higher, and therefore it'll work out for the company's success. Now, in order to do that, we didn't pay ourselves for a decade. We rolled all of the money that we did make back into the company to grow the team, the development process. And now today that we've become known as one of the best brands in the market, we've been able to spend probably more money on research and development than other companies. So inside of that, we have a partnership with Birch University in Croatia, where we have PhDs in the microbiome who are running tests on all of our products, what they do, what they don't do. We're putting hermetic stresses on it. And we'll be releasing some of that information in the coming years as we are submitting to actual research papers for trials to actually prove the efficacy of our supplementation and its positive impacts. We're in the process. We have a patented probiotic that the U.S. patent on it is it's extraordinary. I can't even make the claims. We get nailed off YouTube and stuff of what it's able to do. But put it this way, I have no fear of the current situation in the world because of it. And then cultivating a host of products from that first principles by getting the best and brightest people, neuroscientists, helping our neurochemical offerings, nervous system specialists, research development teams, manufacturing technological firms that allows us to produce things without any of the contaminants or agents or fillers that are used out of convenience for other companies, so that we really offer high-end premium products that work. And then the best part is we invite people when they try our products. If it doesn't deliver the results they expected over and above their expectation, we invite people to simply return the product or whatever's left, and we refund all of their money, including the shipping cost. Why is that? Because we want to cultivate a relationship that's two-way. I don't want to receive money if it doesn't solve the problem. We can't solve every problem, but the ones we can, we do very well.
Oh, that's amazing. It certainly sounds like you've put a lot of research and effort and time into making this company what it is. And we're definitely going to get into a bit more further conversation around digestive enzymes and things like that later on. But first, let's take a step back. Holly's got an article around digestion because just the starting point of everything, digestion, like we see so many clients, digestion is like I would say one of the number one problems people have issues with. So Holly, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, there's something you said earlier about when you were at university and how all of the education was compartmentalized. We kind of feel it's the same way in the health industry too. And digestion is so important, and digestion in itself is really the foundation, because if you're not getting digestion right, then that touches on every other system throughout the body. So I'm so glad that you are here to talk about this with us. This first article, it's called 6 Myths About Digestion Busted. And really, like we said, digestion is the basis of good health. There's no shortage of people complaining of digestive issues. I think digestive over-the-counter medications are the top selling in drugstores. But when we're talking about digestive health, there are a lot of changes that take place in our gut due to our digestive system is reactive. And so it can make it seem complicated for people. So this article here goes over 6 myths. But before we do that, Wade, I was hoping that maybe you could just talk to our audience or maybe walk them through the digestive process and how it's supposed to work. And then maybe we can talk about some of these myths that may be going wrong.
Well, you guys must do your research. I love this conversation because it took me years to kind of summarize. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to give you the layman's terms. There are a variety of biochemical, biomedical terminologies and things that we're going to avoid during this process, but I've broken digestion basically down into 5 distinct stages. The first is the taste, touch, smell, and sense the food that you're having. And that is a sensory, your taste, your smell, your touch, and what that does, the sight of it, even the hearing of it can actually be, you can hear sizzling bacon, or you can hear whatever it happens to be. The scent of fruits walking through, an orchard, or the salivary response as you see your favorite meal, or the pictures on, YouTube cookbook. And there's a Pavlovian response where our body will take these sensory things and say, oh, we need to be prepared for food. And as the food enters the mouth, the body will start to prepare itself in the development and manufacturing of various enzymes. And we'll get into that as a second. So taste, touch, smell food, and then we start masticating the food through chewing it. The food then travels down the esophagus into the stomach. And the stomach is really divided into 2 features. The upper cardiac portion of the stomach, where the food will stay the first 30 to 60 minutes. And this is where the enzymes present in the food are supposed to break this down. So just make a note of that, and I'm going to come back to where the problems come. The next stage, after that 36 minutes, the food drops into the lower half of the intestine, of the stomach, and hydrochloric acid is then released by the body. Now, the hydrochloric acid's principles are twofold. One, it disinfects the food from pathogens, parasites, bacteria, viruses, bugs, any agents that could disrupt your health or vitality. It's very good at that. It's highly acidic. The other thing that hydrochloric acid does is it changes the pH of that food chyme mixture, and that activates some enzymes and deactivates others. Then once that's all kind of gone through peristaltic contraction and movement and the mixture of these enzymes and hydrochloric acid, what happens is the food exits the stomach and into the intestines. Now, as it enters out or exits out of the stomach, there's a thing called bicarbonate buffers, which is just a fancy name for alkaline minerals that neutralize the acid in the body. Okay, and then as the food enters into the intestinal tract, it enters into what we know as the microbiome. The microbiome is the culmination of all the bacteria in your digestive tract, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And for illustrative purposes, I like to say there's 10% good, 10% bad, and 80% of these are opportunists. And that means based on the condition of the food, how pre-digested it is from the early stages of digestion, as well as the proliferation of the bacteria inside your stomach, as well as the content of those foods will determine which bacteria thrive on that food and which bacteria starve on that quote unquote food. So these bacteria are so essential to our life. We live in a symbiotic relationship between these flora, bacteria, probiotics, whatever you want to call it. And without them, they manufacture the final stage of food. They transform that pre-digested food into either building blocks or energy units. And if they don't do those two things, and what we quote as or call the bad guys, they will produce toxins. There's another piece to this is that if you have a disrupted microbiome extensively, you build little holes inside your intestinal lining. This is called leaky gut, and Harvard just released a paper that virtually everybody in the modern world has leaky gut, which means that undigested food particles, AKA feces, are leaking into your bloodstream. Now, particularly in the case of, and then I'll get into the next stage, which is the final stage is elimination of the body through peristaltic contraction. Whatever's left over is moved out of the system. Okay, so that's the digestive system. Now, where do things go wrong in this process? Because as you're talking about people suffering from inflammation, indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, constipation, bloating, gas, diarrhea, they're catching every single cold because 80% of our immune system isn't. So stage number one, we are the only species on the planet that eats its food in cooked state. All living organisms contain enzymes. Enzymes are the difference between the living and the dead. The difference between stones, plants, and peoples is the amount and quality of the enzymes present within that individual. Okay, enzymes are catalysts. In other words, they convert one thing into another. Now, if I'm a bear, I'll eat salmon or blueberries. I eat them in a live state. I consume all the enzymes in addition to the nutrients within that species. If I'm a tiger or a zebra, and a tiger goes and eats the zebra, it eats the entrails where the enzymes and probiotics are highly concentrated, then it eats the carcass. If I'm a horse or a cow, I eat the most sprout-rich, enzymatically rich, the most living parts of grass and plants that I can, because I'm going to get those enzymes and probiotics associated with them into our body. Now, humans, we naturally do the same things. However, we invented this thing called cooking, which disinfects our food very well and makes storage very well and allows us to live in cultures where we couldn't normally live before the development of technology. But it puts a disproportionate amount of load on our enzyme production system. And we have over 25,000 different enzymes inside of our body. And so a doctor will say, well, you don't need enzymes because you make enzymes. Yes, but what are enzymes made from? And how many different enzymes do you make? And if you have a limited capacity to produce enzymes. And if that capacity is being taken up by manufacturing digestive enzymes to break down your food, then your metabolic enzymes, the enzymes that run your brain, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, and the invariable amount of chemical process in the body, you now don't have enough reserves. And over time, a guy by the name of Dr. Edward Hell put forth the theory that you have an enzyme reserve bank account. And that is directly proportional to the length and quality of life of those organisms. And if you fed animals an enzymatically deficient diet, by the third generation, they lost the ability to procreate. They had strange sociological behaviors, and they showed the development of a variety of genetic-based diseases. And he predicted in the 40s and 50s, with the advent of modern commercialized farming, that guess what? They were going to have all sorts of weird genetic diseases and the inability to procreate, as well as strange social interactions in society. And boom, guess what? Here we are. Amazing.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard the digestive or the enzymatic part of digestion explained that way. Thank you so much. That was actually really helpful.
Well, you know, I'm a classically trained nutritionist, exercise physiologist, and there's usually at the first of each nutrition book a couple of paragraphs on enzymes and their importance, because you need enzymes to get your protein, protein to get your minerals, and minerals to get your vitamins. But no one ever addresses the issue. And it's like they'll write a 1,000-page book and they just have this little blurb about enzymes. And sometimes those little omissions have big consequences. And this is what allowed me to rebuild myself. Now let's go to the second stage of problems that people have. So if you are deficient in enzymes, you'll feel tired after meals. You'll have a lot of bloating. You may have skin conditions related to lipase. You might have cognitive disorders or neurochemical imbalances because you can't digest your proteins very well inside the body. Or you will find that you have fats that run through the system because you're not able to metabolize them. So lipases break down fats, or dysregulation in your blood sugar. Amylase enzymes breaks down carbohydrates. Proteolytic enzymes break down proteins, and cellulase-based enzymes break down fiber. So some people can't eat raw food or vegetables and stuff because they don't have the cellulase. Just like people don't have enough lactase, they can't digest milk, or they don't have the gluten digestion enzymes inside the body, like dipeptidyl peptidase 4, which is only produced by a small amount of the population who don't have a problem with gluten. And most of the population now does, thanks to the advent of chemical agents like Roundup, which is widely distributed and put on our food. Okay, so that solves the enzyme issue. Now, maybe you have acid reflux and heartburn. Why do you have that? Well, as the food travels down to the intestinal tract, then what happens? You need to produce enough hydrochloric acid. And when hydrochloric acid gets excessive enough, there's a little flap on the top of that stomach that closes. It's called the esophageal sphincter. That closes, and no problem. If you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, the food begins to sit there and ferment. Gas creeps that up. And then some of that acid is going to splash up and create heartburn and acid reflux. Okay, so the solution is not to take an antacid to block that, which has a cascading effects of making you more susceptible to infection and disease and colds and viruses and things like that. You want to increase your hydrochloric acid so that you actually close the flap and actually do what your job is supposed to do. And by the time you're 35 or 40, the chances that you're producing enough hydrochloric acid are very, very low. Okay, so we've solved that problem. Third stage problem is getting into the microbiome. There's one other minor one that I would say, that people who suffer from low mineralization, particularly in alkaline minerals, or have highly acidic diets or toxic thinking, often will get duodenal ulcers or ulcers because some of that acid will leak out of the intestinal tract into the intestines and burn little holes in it. And so oftentimes good mineralization supplementation can offset those things. Finally, we deal with the microbiome, which is now the vogue topic today. And you can get a test like a Viome test, a gut map test, or anything from a functional medicine doctor that will give you a snapshot into the bacteria you have, which are somewhat genetic and some point environment and lifestyle based. And from that, you can determine the type of foods that you're going to do better with, the ones that you should avoid, and also what are the potential toxic amounts of bad guys that you have that you want to beat down in your body, and what are the good guys that you're deficient in that you want to maybe supplement. And that's why certain probiotics are going to be good at taking out bad bacteria. Some are going to be good at augmenting and supporting your good microbiome, and some are going to just go out and kill off bad guys. And we've developed probiotic strains and have tested them in our laboratory settings to actually demonstrate what they're good in. Are they gram-positive bacteria that it takes out? Is it gram-negative bacteria? Does it actually repair leaky gut situations? Are we able to positively impact the microbiome in a positive way? And we can. And so we've developed offerings in each of those areas, some that are in the development of making the polypeptide chains that make our happy chemicals, like our Cognibiotics brand. Leaky gut, which fixes in combination with IgY Max, will allow us to repair leaky gut. Then we have things like P3M, which is a super aggressive proteolytic probiotic that goes after anything that has a protein that shouldn't be in the body. It'll break and digest that down. We'll leave it at that. You can check out the US patent and what it was able to demonstrate against a variety of different conditions that the world is suffering from. And from that, you can select the right probiotic based on your diet, your lifestyle, your genetics, your gut map, and all that sort of stuff, and show why some brands will work for you and some brands won't. And so, and then the final piece is peristaltic contraction. So a lot of people have impairments because they, the way they sit or their compressed spine, that is impairing electrical flow from the spine to their organs or to the smooth muscle tissue that moves all of this through. And so if any of the biochemical components don't work, you might want to find yourself a really good chiropractor, osteopath, craniosacral person that is able to detect and determine these things that are impairing that and open you up in that. And if you talk to any chiropractor worth his wear, he's probably had at least a half a dozen people that's literally crapped their pants on the table after going through this and getting an unlock. And that sounds pretty graphic, but at the end of the day, we can't underestimate that sitting and sedentary lifestyles can compress that. And so we don't solve that problem, but we do outsource to see, let's say, find yourself someone that can do those manual manipulations, and it's remarkable what you're able to turn on. And so that solves virtually all of the digestive issues that most people suffer from.
It does. Yeah. When my oldest son was a toddler, he had problems with going to the bathroom. He was constipated regularly. And I didn't think it was any like food allergies or anything dietary related. And so I did take him to the chiropractor. And I remember this chiropractor, crazy Dr. Billy DeMoss in Newport Beach. I remember him telling my son, I have one rule, don't poop on my table. He said, wait till you get to your mom's car. And even now I work with a lot of moms with young children, and my number one recommendation is when they have children with issues going to the bathrooms, go to the chiropractor. It's like a miracle solution that most people wouldn't even think of. You did such a fantastic job answering that question. I'm going to run through the 6 myths that are on this article because you touched on them all. It says the 6 myths, number 1, pooping once a week is normal. You just talked about that. Raw vegetables are for everyone. And this says how some people don't have the digestive capacity to digest raw vegetables. Bloating and cramping is normal. It's not. Everyone should have probiotics, and you just touched on that too. Spicy food and stress can cause ulcers, which we now know is not the case as well. And this last one you didn't really touch on, but maybe I missed it, but it says the more fiber you eat, the better it is. So if you have anything to say about that, go ahead.
That's only true if your body is able to metabolize that fiber, which is a combination of the enzymes, your natural genetic advantages or disadvantages in regard to fiber, and the probiotics that are present. What I would say is, for the most part, most people can cultivate the ability to digest fiber if they address that 3-pronged approach in gradually introducing fiber into their diet, adding fiber digesting enzymes, and as well as making sure you have sufficient probiotics. So for example, if you were someone who was subjected to high levels of antibiotics that wiped out a great deal of your fiber metabolizing bacteria, and then let's say you got exposed to a bunch of variant strains and they have taken lodge in your study and you have extreme dysbiosis, eating plant fiber could be essentially extremely painful for you. And so how do you manage that? Now, fiber, as a general rule, if your digestive health is good, is positive. It's extraordinary at blood sugar regulation. It feeds the bacteria and limits carbohydrate consumption in a lot of ways, and has an amazing way to enhance bowel movements, which so many people struggle from. But it needs to be done in a systematic way, especially if you're suffering from it, and by addressing the underlying system, because again, you're not what you eat, you are what you digest, absorb, and utilize. And any undigested food, whether it's fiber, protein, sugar, or fats, left in an undigested state, now becomes a potential toxin. And of course, this is where we get into issues with food colorings, preservatives, dyes, herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. And much of that stuff we'll see deposited into fat tissues. So if you take a biopsy of people when they get the fat lipoed out of them, we'll find all of these chemical agents on our food supply inside of that because our body doesn't have the ability to digest them, and genetic modified foods also qualify within those areas. And so it's not so much the things that we know that will kill us. It is the assumptions that we make about our food or our own systems that will kill us.
Yeah, absolutely. Leah, do you want to go to this next article? We'll dive into enzymes a little bit deeper.
I think we covered a lot of the information, but I just wanted to ask some more questions around the digestive enzymes. So I think it's more around like, whether this would work for everybody. So someone's been listening and they're like, okay, right, I'm going to go out and get a digestive enzyme. Is there any times when this isn't going to work right for them?
Of course there is. There's always, random. Here's the thing. You're going to walk into a health food store and you're going to see enzymes for 10, 15, 20 bucks pop, and you're going to see some for 120. You're like, well, okay, well, what's going on here? Well, it's got protease, amylase, and lipase. And so first and foremost, you need to understand what you are suffering from digestive discomfort from. So proteases for undigested protein, lipases for undigested fats, cellulases for undigested fiber, and amylases for undigested carbohydrates. And there's subcategories of those brands. So based on your dietary choice, let's say you're a ketogenic diet follower, which is very popular and one that Matt is an advocate for. Well, you're going to want a high concentration of a multi-stage proteolytic enzyme that has, several different proteases that work in the different pHs. And you want several different lipases, which digest all the different lipases. Now, amylase or cellulase-based products are probably not that important to you. You might want extra hydrochloric acid in order, because of the proteins are a little bit harder to digest than other foods. So that would how you'd look at that. Now, if you are suffering from gluten intolerance, but you can't stop because, like my mom makes amazing bread, and I guarantee, I don't care how gluten insensitive are, you're going to go for some when you go to my mom's house. She's undefeated in convincing people to eat her bread, and it's great. We've got gluten problems, it's an issue. So you would want something like gluten guardian, which is which is dipeptidyl peptidase, which is the enzyme that is actually produced to digest gluten. If you are a plant-based guy, you want to make sure that you have lots of cellulase-based ones. That's why we're coming out with Vegymes coming up. And then if you're just looking for an all-encompassing, that's why we developed enzymes. 17 different enzymes cover just kind of the whole general. So start with the generalization, and then you get into specialization. I would suggest, though, you do get a gut map or a Viome test or whatever to get a credence or an idea of where you are with the microbiome, because enzymes and probiotics work symbiotically. And if you have acid indigestion, heartburn, hydrochloric acid will probably trump either enzymes or probiotics. And oftentimes people will need all three: enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and probiotics based on their diet. Follow that for about 90 days. And there's something that remarkable happens, is that once you get that down in the digestive system, it seems that your body starts to manufacture the appropriate enzymes that you need as you do it. So you typically need less and less of the product as you go further and further along your journey in recovering health. That's why we do 90-day programs for people who have severe digestive issues.
That's really interesting and very helpful. It's not just as simple as like, oh, I'm not feeling right, or I have these symptoms, I'm just going to go and pick something kind of thing. There's a lot more like maybe bio-individuality to it, depending on what you're eating, and also then on top of that, maybe working with someone that can help you to help analyze that, so that make sure that you're getting the one that works the best for you, which is,
one of the principles in the awesome formula, which we give away for free, is assembling your Jedi Council. And I would say that you two are Jedi Council members for a great number of people on your podcast, where you spent the time, the energy, and are putting your expertise to kind of sift through the information and provide people guide points to initiate, feedback where you can get more targeted with your individualization. I don't advocate a specific diet. I'm dietary agnostic. I think people need to choose a diet that's right for them at their time, to retain flexible as it changes through life, and the very invariable things that happen. and to not get caught in dietary tribalism where it's the do's and don'ts and the thou's, shall's, and the thou shall nots. And everyone that's not part of the tribe is obviously an idiot and should be exterminated from the earth. This type of divisive thinking has not served humanity at any point in history. It is a negative component of the digital world because we create these hyper tribalistic components, which is a remnant of our old reptilian brain. And there's an invitation with humanity. We need to find a more unified, holistic point of view and to learn from the differences of people, because oftentimes those opposing ideologies is the one missing element that I might need at some point in my own journey to health and healing.
You are speaking our language, that's for sure. We totally agree with that. So now I'm loving everything that you're saying, but we're going to change the tact here just slightly, still talking about digestion. But Holly has this really interesting article around farts that we just have to get out.
Yeah, please do.
Oh, I never thought I would talk about farts on the air, but here we go. You know, it's fun. My little boys are going to get a kick out of this. This might be the one episode of mine they listen to just because I'm saying fart. But this article is actually, I don't want to dive into it too much, but it's 5 facts about farts you probably didn't know. And since we did just talk about digestion and gas and bloating and all the things that can go wrong, even I just want to mention there's like a trend right now on social media of women taking pictures of their stomachs in the morning as they're flat and how much they bloat throughout the day, and just trying to normalize that, and how that relates to gas and bloating and farting. Everybody farts. No, it's natural no matter what. But what would you have to say? I think you mentioned before on off air that it's the number one search term, or it's a popular search term to like how to stop farting. If someone is experiencing excessive flatulence in their life, what would be your advice to them to start figuring out the issue?
Great. First
and what's normal?
Yes. First and foremost, you want to create a journal so that you start picking patterns, and those will emerge when it becomes worse or when it becomes heightened. That's the first thing. Second thing, for the most part, especially if you're middle-aged to beyond, hydrochloric acid is usually a great thing, because what's happening is you're having gas build up in the stomach, which is passed on through the entire system and causes that. The third thing is you need to look at what is the state of your microbiome. Do you have too many bad bacteria which are producing these toxic chemicals, which are releasing gases inside the system? And so, you know, I'll get super graphic here because it might be interesting to people. Generally, if you're farting without too much smell, that's usually a hydrochloric acid issue. It's just that there was too much sugars and fermentation that was happening inside the system. If there's a lot of smell associated with it, that usually is a more toxic situation, indicating there's a bacteria dysbiosis inside the system, which you want to address, because that means you're producing undigested proteins, which are leaking into your system. And that can cause autoimmune responses, as your white blood cells are going to start attacking these proteins because they think it's literally you have invaders. And so anytime that you have digestive illness or dysregulation, then we need to address that first and foremost. So elimination diets, hydrochloric acid, and the right probiotics based on a gut map or a Viome test are usually the way that we address it. And if you can, address all of them simultaneously.
Excellent advice. That's really interesting about how the different deficiencies would make the scent, I guess.
The variants. We actually have a video on our Digestive Health Vault where my own genetic and epigenetic expert, Katrine Walensky, who is an absolute super genius in these areas, does an extensive video. So if you want to go to our website, they can grab that, give it away for free. It's really, really cool. And she kind of dives into it. She's a beautiful lady and can speak to women, because so many women want to hide that. Men are more likely to brag about it and do nothing about it, and women are more likely to hide about it and fret about it as an overarching. And I know that's generalization, but I think it's just part and normal. of the variance between men and women.
Well, the article does say something about, I'm sorry, women, but it says your farts smell worse than men's. And it has something to do with women produce more hydrogen sulfide, it says. And then I also know that women complain of stinkier gas, like during times of menstruation and during pregnancy and stuff. So that's probably just a shift in what's going on digestively.
Well, and then the other thing is, you know, we have to recognize that the modern world is, particularly the industrialization of society, had a major break, which we're starting to unpack. And that is that since birth control was developed, women are the first female species in the history of the planet to be able to control the birth cycle. Now, when you change the birth cycle of a population or of a species, you change the species. So the species is under a level of mutation, which we are seeing within these cultural definitions and these breakdowns. And so women today now have more opportunities than they've ever had before, but they also have an increasingly complex life because maybe we've had 10,000 plus generations to figure out the roles of males and females historically, but we've only had 3 to really work out, well, how do we adjust to this new era where women can do all these things that weren't really available to them before? And that in itself is one thing. And then secondary, many of these systems were built on the biological mechanics of how men operate. And women operate, and which concord with their mental cycles and their hormonal cycles, which are very different between women and men, as is indicated by things, let's say what's popular right now is intermittent fasting. Well, for the most part, women, because of their hormone cycle, will do better eating early and stopping the fast early in the day. And men will do better by not eating early in the day and eating later. And then women go through this, on average, 28-day cycle, which are massive fluctuations in their hormonal cycle, which activate and deactivate all sorts of enzyme processes, all sorts of influence on their bacteria, their emotional and psychological schedules. And as you put them inside, say, a male dominant or accepted culture of business and opportunity and business and, you know, how the world works, what's projected sometimes, I think, unfairly onto men is, oh, it's a male dominant society. No, it wasn't an option. And we haven't examined the things that we just accepted as normal. And I think so there's a disproportionate amount of pressure on women to adjust to the opportunities and pressures that come with that. And that in itself can create a stressful situation, which will impact how their digestion works. So it exacerbates some conditions for women because they're trying to meet an increasing amount of pressures, which are almost impossible to do.
It is a very involved answer.
Well,
There's
you know,
a lot of things to unpack there.
I've been in this field for a long time, and I have a lot of empathy and compassion for people because I want people to live their healthiest life possible. And we're adjusting to an increased technologically advanced world. And the advantages are certainly significant, but very few people have thought about all of the consequences that are also cascading down from these major biological stuff. And I think there's a tendency to project social projections onto things, but just not actually looking at the first principles of how does our biology work and how does that implement everything else. And everybody wants to be, right now it's in vogue to see people as victims or perpetrators. And that type of mentality, I think, does a disservice to us all. And what we want to do is find, hey, what are the principles? What's the situation? Let's not make anybody a victim or a perpetrator. Let's just look at the information and work from there in a dispassionate way and apply science to solve these things so that we can all live a little happier and a little healthier.
Yeah, let's be more empowering.
Yeah.
Wade, this has been a really awesome conversation. Where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about you online or follow what you're up to and your company?
Sure. Well, if they jump on bioptimizers.com/carb conversations, they can go to my site there, Bioptimizers, and put in the discount code I think we give. They can get, conversations 10, they'll get discounts. But more importantly, download our course. We have an Awesome Health podcast. We have the Instagram stuff. My team does most of the social media stuff. They'll wheel me out and I'll do my dysfunctional digital thing and disseminate information. But we do have a great course that I give away that talked about it. I think that's a great starting point because you want to go through those first principles for people and allow them to get 5 to 15-minute videos, 12 weeks, 84 days. You can kind of skip, mix and match the things that you want or go through the whole course sequentially. But that will kind of summarize my 30 plus years experience in the field into how to get the fastest result possible in a systemic way and to be able to deploy your resources in a way that gets you the most bang for your buck.
Sounds great. Yeah, definitely. We all agree with starting with digestion, getting that right. That's great that you have a course that does that. Leah, do you have anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, this has been a really great discussion, and I think our listeners are going to get a real lot out of it. And I certainly have been writing lots of notes myself as well. So thanks, Wade, for sharing the information and keep getting that message out there to everyone.
Thanks so much, ladies. I really appreciate the opportunity. And hopefully my team sent you guys some goodies to start playing with, and you can let us know how you like them.
They did. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the end of today's episode. Our music is created by Andrew Bowden and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.